Our first speaker tonight is Rob Norris. Rob has spent his career in corporate communications with Duke Energy, Cummins, and now his own consultancy, When You Leave the Room, when helping speakers connect with audiences that make a bigger impact. But his first love is history. When he was 48, he went back to school to get his master's degree in history. It wasn't exactly a career change, but it did help him later when a job was offered as an instructor at Butler University. Today, Rob teaches in the Butler College of Communications, but he still keeps bringing history lessons into it. He says he just can't help himself. But if you ask Rob what he would say his greatest life achievement is, that of husband, father, and grandfather of 4. Please help me give a warm Sparks welcome to Rob Norris.
Thank you. Thank you. How many people know that Samuel F.B. Morse invented the telegraph? Good. That's not him. That is the Marquis de Lafayette, whom Samuel F.B. Morse who was painting his portrait in Washington, D.C. in 1825. Morse was a painter by training. That's what he did. He did portraits like this. But you'll notice this one's unfinished. There's a reason for that. A horse courier came in from his home in New Haven, Connecticut and said, "Your wife is deathly ill." So he dropped his brushes and he went back to New Haven to find that his wife had already been buried. And it put him in mind of this thought. Wouldn't it be nice if we had better long-distance communication? He was still thinking that 7 years later when somebody put him onto electromagnetism. And he thought, wait a minute, this could work. I could send signals down a wire. Now, he wasn't the only one thinking this. Did you know that before 1840, there were more than 50 people who came up with an electromagnetic telegraph? This is one of them. This is one. This was done by a couple of English scientists. They had actual letters, and the needles would point to them, and that was cool. But it was hard to make. There were 6 wires in this. Morse came up with something that had 1 wire. 1 wire. It was cheaper, it was more durable, it was better built, and it worked. He talked Congress out of $30,000 to build a line between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and in 1844 it was half done when the Whigs in Baltimore nominated Henry Clay for president. And Morse's wire got that news to Washington, D.C. 64 minutes before the train arrived. And that is when we decoupled transportation from communication. The newspapers loved it. They absolutely loved it. They could send a guy to cover the Mexican War, and he could wire the story home. The railroads loved it. In America, we had single tracks. You had to know where the trains were, or they'd collide. Well, the telegraph helped do that. The station masters knew when to put out a train, when to dispatch one, and commerce loved it. There was a 4-day lag in prices between just Buffalo and New York City. The telegraph did away with that. You know where you were coming from. You knew what things cost. You had perfect information, could make better deals. And patriots loved it. Here's a quote from the head of the New York Herald. "Steam and electricity, with the natural impulses of a free people, have made and are making this country the greatest, the most original, the most wonderful the sun ever shone upon." Well, a lot of hyperbole, but steam laid open the continent, and the telegraph knit it together. Not 10 years after Morse came up with his telegraph, 21,000 miles of lines went through America. This map is from 1853. They went right through here. And the guy was an artist. He was an artist, and yet he did this. Now, it wasn't too many years after that, a telegrapher with an 8th grade education came up with a phonograph. And not too many years after that, a couple of bike mechanics from Dayton, Ohio came up with the first controlled sustained flight. And how about this college dropout who changed computation forever? I can tell you about an African American, a barber, who came up with elevator doors that opened and closed automatically. A housewife who came up with the refrigerator in 1914, the household refrigerator. Americans invent a lot of things. And the reason, I think, is number one, we don't care what your background is. Number two, we give you help because each of these people had help. And also because we have determination. That's all that stands between you and making a huge difference in the world.
Don't delay. Get your ticket for the next Sparks event today.